Discover how a rancher's son surprised everyone by choosing an orphaned stable girl as his bride. Jake stood in the barn, the familiar smell of hay swirling around him, a bittersweet comfort amid chaos. The sun spilled through the slats of the barn door, illuminating the bond he cherished with the animals, a world free from judgment and expectations. Trapped beneath his father's stern gaze, Jake felt the suffocating weight of legacy resting heavily on his shoulders. His father envisioned a grand union with Amanda Wilkins, the town's prized daughter, but Jake's heart belonged to Lily, the spirited orphan stable girl. Lily challenged the very essence of the life Jake had been groomed for. Resilient and fiercely independent, she ignited a spark in him that felt both exhilarating and perilous. Every moment they spent together unraveled him a little more, revealing the struggle within. With the town watching their every move, Jake faced the gnawing fear of scandal, his name scratched through whispers and raised eyebrows. The duality of his existence, the rancher's son longing for freedom while upholding family expectations, created an internal storm, unpredictable and electric. As he ran his hand along the flank of a mare, Jake's heart raced, a tumultuous rhythm echoing his internal conflict. How could he choose a life that shackled him to traditions he despised? Each time his father's disappointed face flashed in his mind, doubt twisted like a knife in his gut. Loyalty fought love inside him, igniting a tempest that threatened to consume all rationale. Yet, with Lily, he discovered laughter and joy, components of a future that felt impossible but real. He caught himself daydreaming, wishing for a life shared with her, embraced by open skies rather than the suffocating shadows of expectations. Before we continue, I need to tell you about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system, and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can, leave a like. It really helps with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now, let's continue. The whispers of discontent grew louder, spiraling into a crescendo of stares and speculative mutterings whenever he entered town. Jake found himself at a boiling point, and the weight of his family's expectations clashed violently against the love he felt for Lily. An unexpected incident involving a wayward colt, a mishap that blighted the barn, triggered outrage in the community, their venomous tongues lashing out, fingers pointing in accusation. Jake was dragged into the storm, a man caught between the legacy of his father and the spirited girl who made his heart beat anew. "Do you care what they say?" Lily asked him one day, her eyes tempestuous with emotion, fear mingled with resilience. In that moment, the enormity of their situation was unbearable. Could love withstand this? Jake's breath quickened. Scandal lurked around every corner, a storm brewing that threatened to tear apart everything he knew. As townsfolk gathered to condemn the young girl he loved, Jake's heart sank under the pressure of an unfathomable decision. It was time to confront expectations, his father, the town, and himself. But Lily's expression, filled with uncertainty, shattered his resolve. Tension hung thick in the air as the sun dipped low on the horizon, moments away from Judgment Day. Jake stood on the precipice of choice. Would he have the courage to defy tradition for love, or would he concede to fear's suffocating embrace? The echoes of his father's authority twisted in his mind. Doubts clawed at him relentlessly. Could he truly carve out a space for a future where love transcended the boundaries of their worlds? The questions lingered, unyielding, even as he felt Lily's raw gaze, pleading for strength. Here lay the heart of it, the crossroads, either endless love or searing regret. Jake stood at the edge of the barn, an invisible wall rising between him and the future he yearned for. Straw crunched beneath his boots, each step a reminder of the hard ground that felt increasingly foreign to him. He took a deep breath, as if inhaling the very essence of freedom itself. Yet the air was dense with the weight of judgment, clinging to him like the dust motes dancing in the beams of fading sunlight. Today was pivotal. Today he would confront his father and the town that expected so much from him. Walking through the ranch, he passed the lingering glances and hushed conversations. Each whispered name and stifled laugh solidified his resolve, igniting a fire within him. The familiar path to the house suddenly felt like a trial, a pilgrimage towards the inevitable confrontation. Jake saw his father, standing amid the corral, a looming figure that seemed to embody every ounce of legacy and tradition he was fighting against. "Jake," his father called out, his voice gruff, slicing through the tension. "Get over here. We need to talk." Every cell in Jake's body screamed to turn back, to retreat into the solitude of the barn where his heart felt safe. Yet, he pressed on, each step a calculated move to reclaim his life. The ground beneath him felt steady, a stark contrast to the storm raging in his chest. His father's piercing gaze met his as he approached, a gaze that had long ago cultivated fear and respect within him. "I've been hearing things about you and that girl." The words dripped with disdain, the very mention of Lily twisting in Jake's gut. Jake squared his shoulders, defiance igniting within. "I care for her, Dad. She's everything you taught me to value, hard-working, loyal, and kind." His father snorted, the sound echoing around the corral. "A stable girl? You can't be serious. We have a reputation to uphold. Amanda Wilkins is the future you were meant to have." As the layers of expectation peeled back, Jake felt the urgency rising within him. "It's not what I want. I refuse to be shackled to a life designed by others." The truth tumbled from his lips, raw and unfiltered. His father's face twitched with barely concealed anger, and for a moment, Jake feared he had gone too far. But the primal urge for liberation pulsated within his veins. "Lily makes me feel alive. I see a world with her beyond ranching, beyond your expectations." Silence enveloped them, the only sound the scraping of hoofs against the ground as the horses grazed. Jake could feel the intensity of the moment, a knife's edge of hope and fear. Would his father understand? Would he see reason, or would he lash out as he always had? But before his father could respond, a cacophony of voices erupted from the house, a small mob of townsfolk gathering at the fence line. Jake's heart sank. He could sense the energy of judgment thickening. They watched with a morbid curiosity, eager for his downfall. "Now look what you've done," his father hissed, stepping closer, his voice a low growl. "Do you realize the chaos you're bringing?" Jake's stomach churned at the sight of lingering faces, the whispers returning with a vengeance. It wasn't just his future at stake anymore. It was Lily's as well. With a sudden surge of clarity, he shook off the residual doubt. "I won't let fear dictate my life. I choose love." The words hung in the air, electrifying and damning. In that moment, Jake knew he stood not just for himself, but for every silent dreamer who dared to defy the odds. As the murmurs escalated and the intensity of the town's gaze sharpened, Jake faced the crowd. But deep within him brewed a new fear. What would come next? Would they accept his choice, or would they turn against him entirely? With a newfound determination, Jake took a step forward, ready to defend his heart. But the looming question remained. Could love truly withstand the weight of harsh realities, or would he find himself facing a choice that could shatter everything he held dear? Jake's heart raced as he faced the crowd, feeling the weight of expectation and disdain pressing in on him. The air crackled with tension, each pair of eyes like knives slicing through his resolve. Every inch of the ranch he had known felt alien now, a stage for a play he had not auditioned for. As whispers cascaded through the gathered townsfolk, he realized that their judgment was an echo of his father's eight-generational burden he had borne for too long. In that moment, clarity washed over Jake. He was tired of wearing a mask to please others, tired of sacrificing his happiness for tradition. The pain of waiting and hiding behind expectations had become intolerable. With each heartbeat, he understood that this was a critical juncture, not just for him, but for the life he dreamed of with Lily. His father's response hung in the air, unwritten but palpably imminent. What weight did her reputation carry against the potential for love? Jake shifted his attention to the faces surrounding him, some sympathetic, some gleeful at his discomfort. But most of all, he searched for Lily. Her absence felt like a chasm, pulling and tugging at his insides. He needed her support, their shared dreams, now more than ever. "Jake!" A voice cried out near the back, cutting through the tension. It was Lily's father, a humble man who had watched his daughter grow up, nurturing her spirit as much as the horses he cared for. Rick stepped forward, his rough hands uncertainly brushing the dust from his overalls, reflecting the same weight Jake felt. "You're not alone in this fight. If it's love you desire, then your heart must lead. Don't let the noise drown it out." Hearing those words, Jake felt a renewed surge of courage. Perhaps he wasn't just a lone rebel fighting against his father's will and societal expectations. Here was someone who understood the depth of his choice, someone who recognized the struggle to rise above the shackles of others' dreams. "Rick, thank you," Jake replied, his voice gaining strength. "This isn't just about me. It's about the right to choose my path. I can't let the shadows of what comes before dictate what I can become." As he continued, the crowd seemed to shift, some nodding in understanding, others frowning in contempt. "My relationship with Lily isn't a rebellion. It's an awakening. We're building our dreams together, not just for ourselves, but to pursue a life that we can be proud of." Jake felt a profound shift within himself. Catharsis cut through the venom of fear, releasing him from the grip of past expectations. He was beginning to see the invisible thread that connected those who dared to dream like Rick, like Lily, even like his own father, who had once been a young man with dreams of his own. But his father's furious glare caught him off guard. "You think this is just about you? You're tarnishing our name. You're throwing away legacy, the very foundation of this family." As the words erupted from his father's lips, the crowd seemed to tighten, waiting for Jake's response. Rather than recoil, Jake stood tall, emotions flaring but focused. "You taught me that strength is not just in holding on to what we have. It's also in letting go of what doesn't serve us. I can't be your vessel any longer. I refuse to let this legacy bind me to a future devoid of joy." A silence fell, broken only by the rustle of leaves in the impending evening breeze. Jake felt the stir of panic, but alongside that, hope surged. This was not a surrender. It was an assertion of his being, an act of personal defiance. Now he stood at the threshold of not just choice, but transformation. How could he ensure that the path ahead, fraught with obstacles, would allow him to build the life he longed for? The crowd remained unmoving, but a flicker of respect shimmered in some of their eyes. Jake turned to the tall grass that framed the horizon, where a future with Lily felt like the softest whisper, still unreachable, but now unmistakably a real possibility. Yet looming above him was the precarious line between acceptance and rejection, a line Jake would have to cross if he were to prove that he could forge his own identity. The question gnawed at him: what risks would he need to take next? And would he be strong enough to face the consequences of a life lived authentically? As he stepped forward, ready to reclaim not only his future, but his truth, another voice cut through. "You're making a mistake, Jake." The ripple of tension returned, sharper than before. The challenge lingered, an invitation to confront the growing tempest within his heart. What awaited him in this uncharted territory could either lift him or utterly break him. The moment of truth approached, and he had to decide if he was ready to risk everything for love. The moment hung like a gavel in the air. The crowd split between whispering dissent and simmering approval. Those words, "You're making a mistake, Jake," came from a shadowed figure near the back, a scornful voice filled with conviction and scorn. It was Brian, the very embodiment of Jake's former life, his childhood friend turned self-proclaimed guardian of legacy. The irony stung, as Brian was precisely the type to cling fiercely to tradition while shackling others with the same chains. "Is this what you want?" Brian spat, contempt weaving through his tone. To throw away everything your family has built? Lily S. a dreamer, not a doer. You know that. Jake S. stomach churned. It would have been easy to back down, to acquiesce to the pressure of the familiar expectation wrapped around him. Instead, he felt a fierce resolve pushing back, igniting a fire inside of him he hadn't known existed. He surveyed the crowd, noting faces that had once been friendly but now were fraught with judgment. "Brian," Jake replied, firm yet measured. "I'm not throwing away a legacy. I'm challenging it. A name can only carry you so far if it leads to a life of regret. You think I'm making a mistake? Then let me make it. Let me discover who I can become outside of my father's shadow." Each word reverberated through the gathering, creating ripples of energy. For the first time, he felt weightless, unburdened by the weight of tradition that had cloaked his every move. He wasn't merely trying to win over the crowd. He was declaring allegiance to his own aspirations. As he locked eyes with Rick, the older man nodded, a sign of silent agreement and support. But Jake's father stepped forward, his face a mask of fury, and the tension thickened. "And what of your responsibilities? What about the ranch? The family?" Jake's pulse quickened. It was the moment he had rehearsed only in his mind, the moment that would determine the direction of his life and, possibly, the lives of those he loved. "My responsibility is to myself and to the life I choose. I want to inherit regret." The truth tasted foreign, yet liberating on his tongue. He imagined the weight of that legacy, forged in sacrifice and silence, and it enraged him. "I have to choose what brings me joy, what fuels my passion. This ranch is rich not just in land, but in potential, and it can thrive even if I choose a different path." The shift in the crowd's energy was palpable, like the stirring of leaves before a storm. Skepticism lingered, but curiosity awakened new faces. It was as if they began to see him, not just as Jake the rancher's son, but as Jake, an individual with a vision. "I'm ready to build something new," he continued, sensing the urgency rising within him. "I want a life where love fuels ambition rather than fear eclipses my vision. I want to be defined by tradition. I want to redefine what it means to be a part of this family." Even as he spoke, doubts clawed at his mind. Questions formed like dark clouds. Could love truly sustain the pressures of reality? Would the ranch survive without him at the helm? The answers felt weak under the weight of his growing determination, feeding into his desire for authenticity. As the murmurs swept through the crowd, a flicker of something respect perhaps began to emerge, a possible shift in the tide. But just as quickly, fear pressed down. Brian's voice cut through the fleeting hope. "You'll regret this, Jake. One day you'll realize love can't sustain a life." Jake's instincts reacted, his heart pounding in protest. Brian was voicing the fears that echoed in Jake's mind. What if love wasn't enough? What if experience proved Brian right? But in that moment, surrounded by all and thankfully unshackled from the burdens of beforehand, Jake understood something essential. He was willing to gamble on love, to risk everything for the chance to discover who he was meant to be. It was a leap into the unknown, but the alternative felt like a death of the spirit. He took a deep breath, squaring his shoulders against criticism, ready to confront not just Brian but the doubts residing in his own heart. This journey would test him, but maybe in that vulnerability lay the seeds of his true identity. The crowd shifted again, anticipation building as he wondered how they would respond. Would they turn their backs on him, or could his boldness truly inspire them to reconsider their own paths? He stole a glance at the horizon, where the sun dipped below the earth, casting gold and crimson in its wake. A beautiful uncertainty awaited him, illuminated in the soft gleam of twilight. The tension crackled anew, and as he stood determined, Jake could feel the storm brewing within, not of despair, but of potential. Everything was about to change, for better or worse. What awaited him next would test the depth of his commitment, not only to Lily, but to himself. Would he step into this new version of himself, no longer bound by the past, or would the weight of tradition drag him back into the shadows? Jake stood at the precipice of his own transformation, grappling with the weight of his decision. The crowd's murmur ebbed, giving way to an uncomfortable silence that hung in the air like a gathering storm. Outside the confines of tradition, he was entirely exposed, yet exhilarated. This was the moment he had yearned for, where he could finally reach for more than the life preordained for him. In that instant, he recognized a crucial truth. He was stepping into his own narrative, one removed from the chains of expectation and familial duty. His heart raced, a mixture of fear and adrenaline coursing through him, igniting a fire that began to dispel the doubts. Could Lily understand this departure from normal? Would she embrace the unconventional life he aspired to create? Each thought fanned the flames of determination within him. Are you done with flashy speeches, or are you ready for real work? The voice cut through the stillness. It was Rick, the old man whose presence felt like a soft weight, yet carried wisdom he had earned over a lifetime. Jake turned, caught off guard. What do you mean? Rick took a few steps closer, his weathered face earnest. Words are pretty, son, but they need action to back them up. You've got this moment. Now what are you going to do with it? The challenge settled over Jake like a thick fog of reality. He had claimed his vision, but Rick's words echoed. What was the next step? I need to put together a plan. Something tangible, he replied, more to himself than anyone else. Then do it. Rick's voice was steady. Transform the ranch. Show them that you mean it. Shake off the lingering shadows. This was what it meant to take control. Jake envisioned the ranch not as an anchor, but as a launching pad. He began to see new possibilities, implementing sustainable practices, involving Lily in creative ways to attract visitors, perhaps even growing the ranch into a community resource rather than a weighty family emblem. With renewed hunger, Jake began pacing, forming strategies in his mind. What if we produce organic vegetables? What if we run workshops on livestock care? We could have music nights, farm-to-table dinners. Each idea built upon the last, creating a vibrant picture that was entirely his. But even as he spoke, a nagging thought flickered. What if I fail? Each option felt like a privilege he had never allowed himself to consider. Yet the specter of disappointment loomed nearby, whispering maxims of responsibility. Fear of failure doesn't mean you shouldn't try. Rick spoke, seeming to read his thoughts. Look, kid, I've seen this ranch thrive on the hopes of dreamers before. It was never easy, but they believed in what they could create, not what they were meant to uphold. Could he summon that same courage? The leap of faith left him breathless, but it was exhilarating. As the glow of twilight deepened, he felt more alive than ever. Jake pushed aside the negative thoughts threatening to consume him. I'm going to do this, he asserted, raising his voice slightly now. I'll show Brian, my father, everyone that this ranch can be more than just a family name. I'm starting a new legacy. The tension in the air shifted yet again. The crowd remained uncertain, but their gazes sharpened with interest. With each passing heartbeat, Jake detected a shift beneath the surface. Some were beginning to align with his vision. Brian's voice, hoarse with disbelief, cut in once more. And if it all fails? What then? You'd tear apart everything your family built? The gravity of Brian's assertion weighed on him. What if he faced failure? Would any love provide solace when the dust settled? I want to let fear dictate my life. That is what tradition does, Jake countered, startled by the points he had yet to consider. Life isn't meant to be boxed between expectations, Brian. He paused, allowing the words to linger. It's for breaking molds. With renewed fervor, Jake felt a convergence of tension and purpose merging in a way that had never happened before. He glanced back at the horizon, where the sun disappeared, leaving a veil of stars to guide his way. In that moment of clarity, freedom began to take root in him. His journey would not merely consist of asserting himself, but of bringing light to a space too long shadowed by the past. Would he have the strength to plant those seeds? And then it hit him, the profound realization that stepping out of the shadows came with uncertainties he had yet to reckon with. As he prepared for the challenges ahead, he knew one thing for certain. This was only the beginning. What he didn't yet comprehend was how soon the trials would come knocking, bringing forth a greater confrontation that would test the very core of his commitment, not only to his dreams, but to Lily and their future. Jake awoke the next morning with the sun filtering through the curtains, casting a warm glow across his room. The excitement from the previous night still lingered, electrifying his veins as he envisioned the ranch reimagined under his guidance. Yet, the weight of reality began to seep in like morning dew. He couldn't ignore the mountain of obstacles in his path. Successful transformations required more than just vision. They demanded strategy and relentless execution. He propelled himself from bed, focused on the tasks ahead. The first order of business was to pull together a team of people who would believe in his vision, who shared his determination to reshape the ranch. He recalled the faces of those present during his moment of rebellious clarity. Some showed skepticism, while others sparked intrigue. Who could he rally? With that thought, he set out to find collaborators, allies who could turn ideas into action. Heading to the main barn, Jake found Lily brushing down one of the horses, sunlight dancing in her hair. He paused, watching her for a moment. She exuded a sense of calmness that seemed at odds with his chaotic thoughts. As he approached, she smiled, a small gesture that warmed him but also filled him with a mixture of apprehension and desire. "I need to talk," he said, his voice straining with urgency. "Seems serious. What's going on?" She stepped back from the horse, brushing off her hands. "I'm serious about changing things around here, about launching that vision I shared last night," he confessed, hoping she would be part of this new chapter. Lily regarded him closely, her brows furrowed. "And you honestly think this can work? The ranch has been the way it is for so long." "It can work. We can make it work," he insisted, determination sharpening his resolve. "I want to include you in this process. I want your ideas, your creativity. Together, we can attract interest, generate new income streams." She hesitated, and for a brief moment, Jake saw a flicker of doubt in her eyes. "Jake, change isn't easy. People get attached to tradition. What if they don't accept any shifts?" He fought back a swell of frustration. "That's the risk we have to embrace. But isn't doing nothing a greater risk? I want to make this place thrive, not just survive." He took a step closer, leaning in to emphasize his sincerity. "You mean more to me than just some project. I want to do this together." Lily studied him, contemplating the weight of their futures. After what felt like an eternity, she nodded slowly. "All right, I'm in. But if we're doing this, we need a solid plan." "Great. Let us start outlining our ideas today." Only hours into collaborating with Lily, Jake began to unearth hidden talents within himself, ideas flowing like water from a fissure. Together, they bounced concepts back and forth, organic produce, aligned with workshops on animal care intermingled with music nights. Each idea built momentum, filling him with a profound sense of purpose. As the sun dipped low in the west, painting vibrant hues across the sky, a sense of accomplishment settled in. But the day's progress brought with it a worrying undercurrent. He still had not spoken to Brian, the skepticism lurking like a dark cloud over his aspirations. Jake knew confronting his brother would be necessary. It would be both an emotional and strategic battle that he needed to win to seize the change he envisioned. That night, as he lay in bed, the horizon of his dreams fresh in his thoughts, a seed of doubt sprouted. What if he failed? He had no control over how others would respond to his ambitions. The confrontation with Brian loomed, a mounting pressure that threatened to unravel everything he was trying to build. He turned in his sheets, eyes fixated on the stars, yearning for direction. "Tomorrow," he whispered to himself, "tomorrow, I'll face Brian." In that promise lay a deeper conflict. He would have to convince his brother not just of his plans for the ranch, but of his right to pursue them. The impending exchange would serve as the true test of his resolve. Would he emerge validated? Or would he falter under the weight of family expectations? With nervous determination pulsating through him, Jake drifted off to sleep, oblivious to the revelations and hidden trials waiting just beyond the horizon. The moment of truth was approaching, and he was ready to face whatever might come. Jake woke the next day with a heavy heart, burdened more by the impending conversation with Brian than any physical fatigue. The sunlight flooding his room felt too bright, too lively, contrasting sharply with a knot of anxiety that twisted in his stomach. He knew he couldn't avoid his brother forever. That would only magnify the tension. After a quick breakfast, he meandered toward the barn where Lily was already tending to the horses. As he approached, he noticed her focused demeanor. Perhaps, he thought, he could channel some of that determination. She had an air of steadiness that seemed to anchor him. "Hey, Lily," he started, attempting to steady his voice. "I'm going to talk to Brian today." Her expression shifted from concentration to concern. "Are you ready for that? You know how he can be." "Not sure if I'll ever be ready," Jake admitted, running a hand through his hair, "but I need to. I can't keep moving forward without his support, or at least without getting him to hear me out." "Do you have a plan for how to approach this?" she asked, an intensity in her gaze that encouraged him to think deeper. "The plan is, to be honest." The simplicity of his response surprised him. In the swirl of yesterday's ideas and optimism, he had forgotten to ground himself. Brian was family. Raising the stakes meant he had to lay bare his ambition and insecurities. "I'll show him the vision we've crafted together." She nodded slowly. "Just make sure you also listen. He may surprise you." Jake took her advice to heart. As much as he felt the urgency to lay out his vision for the ranch, he knew it was essential to understand Brian's perspective too. The brotherly bond they shared had often included healthy debates, but today felt different. This was about the future, not just a disagreement over methods. With newfound resolve, Jake took a deep breath and headed towards the house where Brian was finishing up chores. The morning air buzzed with anticipation. As he reached the porch, he paused to collect his thoughts. Inside, sounds of clanging dishes and the rhythmic shuffle of footsteps set an unhurried tempo. He knocked lightly before entering. Brian looked up, surprise flickering across his face. "Jake, what is up? You look like you've seen a ghost," Brian quipped, but the teasing didn't reach his eyes. "I need to talk to you. Can we sit?" The request transformed the atmosphere, curtaining the light-heartedness of the moment. Brian nodded, skepticism lacing his features. They sat across from each other at the kitchen table, the weight of unspoken words pressing against them. "I've got some ideas about the ranch," Jake started, attempting to maintain his calm facade. "I know you're concerned about how my plans might disrupt things, but I think there's a real chance to change everything." Just like that, Brian's voice raised slightly, arms crossed defensively. "You can't just toss out years of tradition because you had a sudden urge to be something more." Jake's pulse quickened. "This isn't a whim, Brian. I want to make this place thrive, and I believe we can innovate without erasing our history." Brian's eyes narrowed, and for a moment, they both fell silent. The kitchen felt smaller, suffocating under the weight of Jake's ambition clashing with Brian's steadfastness. "I'm not against change," Brian finally said, his voice low, "but you need to understand what you're risking. If this goes south, it's not just going to hurt your dream, it's all of us." The conflict mirrored the tumult within Jake, fear and determination both raging in his gut. "I need your support, whether you believe in my vision or not." "I'll listen," Brian muttered, a hint of resentment mixed with consideration. "But don't expect me to sign off on foolhardy choices." Jake's heart raced. It felt like the first step towards reconciliation, but he was still far from convincing Brian fully. Would this be the breakthrough he hoped for, or a difficult conversation that would push them further apart? As he prepared to elaborate on their plans, the stakes were clear. A defining moment was unfolding. "Just give me a chance to explain," Jake urged, realizing that today marked not just a family discussion, but a turning point in his journey. Little did he know, Brian's next question would challenge everything Jake thought he knew about their family's legacy and his place in it. Jake shifted in his chair, his mind racing. Brian had been taking his time, finding his words, and the quiet pressure that hung between them felt heavier than ever. The kitchen clock ticked ominously, each second echoing his insecurities. "Okay," Brian finally said, the openness of his voice colliding with the guarded expression on his face. "What exactly do you see as the future of this ranch? You need to convince me that it's more than just a fleeting idea." Jake's stomach dropped. Those words were exactly what he had hoped to hear, but hadn't truly anticipated. The fate of the ranch and his relationship with Brian depended on his response now. He cleared his throat, pushing aside doubts. I envision a ranch that honors our roots while embracing new technologies, things like sustainable practices and diversification. We can integrate organic farming, perhaps even create a space for community events. Imagine educating visitors about what we do and offering them experiences. This can be much more than just a place where we breed horses. He caught Brian's gaze, determined to hold it. Brian was still, but the tightening of his jaw revealed skepticism lingering beneath the surface. Community events? Are you ready to turn this place into some sort of petting zoo? Brian crossed his arms, his posture a fortress against Jake's enthusiasm. No, it's not about that. It's about being relevant. Times are changing, and we can't cling to the past if we want to survive. We need to modernize. It's about building a future together, not just for us, but for the next generation. Silence lingered again. Jake wrestled with his emotions. He wanted to break through the shell encasing his brother's convictions, but he knew that pushing too hard could just as easily backfire. He leaned in, confidence swirling with fear in a disorienting mix. I believe we can foster a deeper appreciation for what we have while expanding our reach, Brian. It's an opportunity to secure our legacy rather than risk it slipping away due to stagnation. Brian's brow furrowed, the turmoil beneath the surface surfacing in incremental waves. Jake pressed further. I understand what's at stake. This isn't just about me wanting something different. It's about what's best for the ranch amidst the changing tides of reality. We must evolve, or we risk being left behind. Brian finally uncrossed his arms, but Jake could see he was grappling with something deeper than a simple disagreement. There was a fierce pride in their family's history, a longing for consistency in a world constantly shifting beneath their feet. I get that you want to expand, Brian said, his voice softer but still edged with doubt. But I can't just agree to it without knowing you've thought it all the way through. These are more than just ideas. They're decisions that impact lives, not just ours, but everyone around us. Jake felt the urgency wrap around his motivation again. Then help me refine them. I can't do this alone, and I'll promise you one thing: I will come to you with every detail. I will lay it all out transparently. We can take this step together. Brian peered at him, searching for sincerity hidden within Jake's intense gaze, as if holding the answers to questions Jake had yet to articulate. The possibility of true collaboration flickered like a distant light, but remained tantalizingly out of reach. As the shadows in the kitchen deepened, Jake realized it wasn't just about proving his worth as a partner in their family's legacy. It was about forging a path where both brothers could feel secure and validated. Okay, let's talk about these ideas more. I want to see if they can withstand some scrutiny, Brian finally replied, a cautious curiosity breaking through the wall he'd built. Jake felt the knock of adrenaline pulse through him. This was the opening he needed, but what lay ahead was unclear. Would his vision entice Brian further, or would it spark deeper rifts in their relationship? Just as Brian opened his mouth, intent to continue the discourse, the barn doors creaked ominously, causing both brothers to turn in unison. They watched as a figure emerged, a stranger on horseback, dust swirling in the late afternoon light. What are they doing here? Jake thought, his heart racing anew. The future he was trying to solidify now teetered on the precipice of something unknown. The figure on horseback approached slowly, the echo of hoofbeats puncturing the tense air that clung to Jake and Brian. It felt as if time itself had conspired with Jake's racing heart. He had envisioned a future of collaboration, but that vision momentarily faltered in the face of the unexpected arrival. The rider dismounted, revealing a young woman with a determined gaze, her sun-kissed skin and dusty boots suggesting a life of hard work. Nerves knotted in Jake's stomach. He recognized her immediately. Arya, the girl he'd seen lingering around the ranch during his childhood, was now a young woman with a fierce spirit. Memories surged her laughter in the summer air, the way she'd cared for the horses, a soft connection amidst the chaos of their past. What does she want? This is our moment, Jake thought, irritation mixing uneasily with a ghost of nostalgia. Jake, do you know her? Brian's voice was edged with suspicion, a sharp reminder that there were parameters to their familial discussions. The arrival of a stranger threatened to unravel what Jake was struggling to build. Yeah, I remember her, Jake replied. Compelled by something beyond logic, he stepped forward, ignoring his brother's warning glance. Every instinct warned him to keep business and personal matters separate, but something in Arya's approach pulled at him. As she neared, her confidence radiated. I heard you're looking to expand the ranch, she said, her voice steady as if she rehearsed it 1,000 times. I've been working on some innovative techniques in organic farming. I thought I could help. Jake blinked, processing her words for a moment. You've done all that? She nodded, and he noted the fierce pride in her eyes, a reflection of the passion that had long been dormant in him. I have been studying sustainable farming for 3 years. I want to help you, but I need to know, are you ready to embrace real change here? Brian shifted uneasily, but remained silent, contemplating the implications of her proposal. A moment stretched into an infinite bubble, punctuated by the sounds of the ranch that felt suddenly distant. Jake wanted to seize this opportunity, but hesitated, acutely aware that his brother was still grappling with doubt. I need to talk to Brian about our plans. I can't just jump into another partnership, he stammered, trying to maintain focus as Arya's presence shifted the ground beneath him. I understand, she replied, a flicker of disappointment crossing her features. But what are you afraid of? Growth can be intimidating, but it's necessary for survival. Her words struck a chord, highlighting the very fear Jake had been wrestling with. Perhaps this invitation to collaborate, however unconventional, was exactly the nudge he needed. The prospect of mutual support with someone who shared his vision stirred a longing inside him. Brian, Jake said, turning toward his brother with renewed energy, this might be the sign we need to explore new ideas. What if we included Arya in our discussions? Brian's eyes darkened, resistance brewing. Jake, this isn't just about us. It's about the ranch's future, he warned, but doubt clouded his expression. The discomfort in Brian's posture revealed an underlying struggle, the friction between his protective instincts and the potential this girl represented. Jake sensed the crack in Brian's defenses, yet the hesitation lingered. Sometimes the biggest risks lead to the greatest rewards. What if Arya's insights push us to tenure a new era? He pressed, testing the weight of his own resolve. The ranch, now layered with the presence of Arya, morphed into something alive, filled with potential. Suddenly, Jake's vision felt more robust, intertwined with those he never expected to partner with. But the core of his conflict churned deeper. As he stood between Brian and Arya, the tension erupted once again, a latent strife igniting within the protective confines of their family legacy. What seemed clear was shrouded in uncertainty. Jake was about to confront not only the complexities of the ranch's future, but also the bonds that tethered him to his brother. Just as he gathered the courage to speak, a low, threatening rumble of thunder rolled in from the distance. Nature itself seemed to echo the turmoil within, foreshadowing a storm brewing ahead. Would the choice to collaborate unlock new paths, or would it splinter the very foundation of their brotherhood? The storm clouds gathered ominously as Jake stood at the crossroads of his life, caught between the familiar bonds of family and the exhilarating, albeit daunting, possibilities that lay ahead. His heart raced, caught in the tension of this tenuous moment with Arya and Brian, two faces of change that represented opposing forces in his world. Jake, how can you even consider involving her in a choice that will determine our future? Brian's voice cut through the air, clear and demanding like thunder. The weight of his brother's disapproval settled heavily, but Jake felt an unshakable resolve growing within him. This isn't just about what we've done in the past, Brian. It's about where we want to go. I refuse to let the legacy of our family become a shackle, he argued, his voice steady but filled with urgency. Each word felt like a stand he was making, one that would solidify his commitment to change. Arya watched on, her patience unwavering. Jake S. right. I've studied the methods that define sustainable ranching. I can help us adapt, and I believe can create something revitalizing, a community hub rather than just a family business. She interjected, her passion seeping through. Brian's eyes flicked between Jake and Arya, weighing each side with the seriousness of a man who had always adhered to tradition. And what happens if it fails? If it all collapses because you decide to embrace an unknown path? The strain in his tone hinted at the fear that lived beneath his protective exterior. Jake felt the questions reverberate in his chest. The fear of failure was a beast he had wrestled with for too long. He was beginning to understand that not all risks were reckless. Some were necessary for growth. He let the turmoil swirl before him, acknowledging the possibilities of hope and dread entwined in a singular moment. If we don't try, that is the only true failure, he declared, his conviction echoing across the kitchen. Standing still in the face of change is a choice too, and I refuse to live my life dictated by fear. The ranch deserves better than fear. It deserves a future that inspires. Brian's shoulders relaxed slightly, though the skepticism still lingered in his eyes. You talk about a grand vision, but have you considered the logistics? The costs? The community's acceptance? Jumping into this without a solid plan could destroy everything. He countered more thoughtfully. For a heartbeat, Jake felt the weight of Brian's words. The harsh realities of their lives could not be ignored. He'd be remiss not to acknowledge the implications of change. But more than anything, he felt ready to embrace the chaos of transformation, guided not just by ambition, but by love. Let us build a plan together, Jake proposed, shifting his focus to his brother, attempting to unite their ambitions instead of pushing against one another. I'm not expecting you to follow blindly. I want your input. Let us take the time to lay out every risk and every potential benefit. We can involve Arya, too. The words hung in the air, an invitation intertwined with cryptic hope. Perhaps this invitation to collaborate would illuminate the shared goal lurking beneath their complex relationship, a recognition that they were stronger together if only they could overcome their hesitations and fears. Fine, Brian finally relented, though his expression remained wary. I'll consider working with both of you, but it has to be done thoroughly. If we're doing this, I refuse to fail because of an impulsive decision. Arya smiled quietly, and Jake felt the smallest flicker of relief wash over him. This had been a stepping stone. They desperately needed a compromise that spoke to their commitment to not just uphold their family legacy, but to redefine it. As they began articulating the specifics of their plans, the tentative alliance began to take shape, built on careful consideration rather than reckless ambition. In that room, a spirit of collaboration emerged, one that drew from each of their strengths. Later that week, as they gathered to discuss their findings and strategies, Jake felt a steady, growing confidence. They had met with local economics experts and community leaders who expressed interest in a shared vision. The ideas began to flow and coalesce, each meeting revealing deeper layers of excitement for what lay ahead. But as excitement bloomed, his heart tugged towards Lily. She deserved clarity too, the sacred trust forged between them as they embraced a joint purpose. One evening, after a successful meeting filled with newfound hope, Jake sought her out in the barn where she was working. "Lily, can we talk?" he asked, leaning against the wooden beam, the rich, earthy scents grounding him amidst the chaos unraveling in his mind. "Of course, what's on your mind?" Her smile was a balm for his worries, but also a stark reminder of the world he wanted to create for them both. "I want to include you fully in this journey. We're beginning to build something bigger with Brian, Arya, but I want your voice in this too, your ideas, your dreams." She studied him, genuine curiosity laced with urgency. "What are you envisioning, Jake?" He took a deep breath. "A ranch rooted in community, education, and sustainability. A space that not only celebrates our legacy, but also pushes us forward, anchored in values we can all believe in." And I want you beside me every step of the way, creating new programs, expanding outreach, whatever it is we can dream up together. Lily's face lit up, her eyes reflecting the possibilities blooming before them. That sounds amazing. I'd love to be a part of it. But Jake, what about the challenges? I hope you realize it won't be easy. I know that. But listen, what I've learned is there's more to gain when you actively face challenges together. I want to pursue this without your insight. We'll transform this ranch, not based on what's expected, but on what fuels our hearts. Her expression softened even more, embodying a sense of shared purpose that steadied him. Together, they could navigate whatever storms awaited them. Weeks later, the whole community gathered for a family meeting at the ranch, where they would present their revitalization plan. With Jake, Brian, Arya, and Lily leading the charge, they framed a presentation filled with hope and realistic assessments. As Jake stood before the crowd, there was a calm resolve in him that wasn't there before. He breathed in the energy of possibility and resilience, signaling each person felt it too. Today wasn't just about launching a business, it was about creating a future aligned with ethical, impactful choices. Olivia spoke of education, Brian shared economic forecasts, Arya discussed community integration, and they all emphasized how tradition could nurture transformation. The crowd's reaction was mixed but raw with curiosity. Some leaned toward skepticism, while others found a sense of hope rekindled. Jake felt his heart swell as he turned to Lily, their shared aspiration shining through his eyes. He took a step further and opened it up to discussions. Engaging the community instilled an understanding that was beyond mere business. It embraced their shared dreams. By the end of the meeting, the applause resonated, reverberating through the hollow barn, not as mere sound, but as recognition of progress, acceptance of a journey still unfolding. In that moment, Jake found a home not just in the ranch as a place, but in redefining what legacy could mean as he adorned a mantle of visionary leadership. Could this journey truly bind together aspiration, passion, and love? He believed it would. As they stepped outside under that winning sunset, he embraced Lily, them both finding peace in a future theirs to shape. Every stride forward held not just challenges, but a promise of adventure for the ranch, for their love, and for each of their own identities. Jake had awakened something within himself that honorably transcended tradition. He had learned that feeling alive often meant risking everything for love and truth. His heart grew fuller, nourished by both sleepless nights and open conversations. This was only the beginning, but as the stars began to pepper the evening sky, he stood firm in knowing that he had chosen authentically for himself, for his love, and the dream of a future they would build together. Jake had conquered a journey illuminated by commitment, and for that, he could find satisfaction in knowing that fulfillment stemmed from facing the storm, not merely seeking shelter from it. Now was the moment to share their story, an invitation to others to recognize that love, ambition, and five-character resilience could forge unimaginable paths when grounded in commitment. And as he gazed around at the expansive plains before him, laden with both challenges and promise, he knew one thing for certain. It was time to take the next leap forward, to awaken the world around them to what could truly be. Now is the time to subscribe immediately to the channel so you don't miss the next exclusive emotional stories. This is the moment to show your support. Leave a like now to feed the algorithm. Comment your reactions and theories about how Jake's journey concludes. And do not wait even one more second to share this video with at least 5 friends who absolutely need to see this transformative conclusion. True fans of personal overcoming stories understand the vital importance of supporting the channel through these simple actions.